All right, everybody. Welcome to Zen One Podcast. Brian, I'm so excited to talk to you about this stuff. Like, we've been friends for a long time. You've ran a DSO, you've ran a private office in some of the toughest markets. And like, you're recently transitioning out of a DSO, which is going to be a separate podcast sometime down the road. Right now, what I'm really interested in is this report came out, and it came out from ADA. I'm going to share the screen. So I basically get an email saying that, where is this? Where's this thing? I get an email that says dental sector could be facing additional headwinds. And it piques my interest. And I'm like, we're in a dental space. We need to know all these things. And I'm curious what headwinds we're experiencing and what's about to happen to dentistry, right? So like, I'm reading this thing, dental sector could be facing additional headwinds. And I'm reading, and there's a lot of stuff like, hey, so-and-so says that we're facing difficulties in hiring and yada, yada. So then I go to the actual data, and it's ADA that put out it's, I think, Health Policy Institute. Yeah. And their Health Policy Institute puts out a report and says dental economy is holding pattern. Report reveals decline in dentist economic confidence. So I'm like, show me the data now. Like, I'm really interested because what if like we now start losing dentists, right? So like they're throwing the white towel and saying I'm out of the industry. So I'm reading this thing, and then I actually get the report. And basically, my assumption is, and I shared this with you. I can't wait to hear your take on this. My assumption is there's some guy out of ADA decided to just write an opinion that says that the dentists are skeptical because they're not confident in overall U.S. economy. And this might be explained by significant difficulties dental offices report in recruiting staff. Duh, that's obvious. Like that's like happens all the time. And then if I look at the actual report, what I like about this report is dentist economic confidence hits a low, but that's like sending out emails to ADA members saying, how do you feel about it? Dentists in general are very like pragmatic, right? In general, they'll be like a little bit more skeptical as people, like as a profession, versus being like, woo, woo, I'm so excited, like things are going to be great. And so then I keep scrolling this thing and I see that the consumer dental spending is up by 3%. Like that's the actual data, right? So dental spending lacks healthcare spending. Okay, who cares? And then dental practice economies, like everything looks good from a data standpoint. So like, why we're even like saying that the like we should worry about stuff, Brian? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. I, I'm skeptical, and I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of people that are skeptical in anything that the ADA says. Um, Personally, my skepticism started during COVID, and like the ADA and then the state that I was in, New York, like their response, um, just to the whole COVID thing. I was like, oh man, you guys don't have any clue what you're doing. Um, Not that anyone did, but, um, it's interesting. I think that dentists in the past, I would guess, and I actually don't have the statistics on this, but I would guess that a lot more dentists used to be part of organized dentistry, their state, the ADA, all that stuff, and I just don't see it anymore. So I wonder if there's just a certain type of dentist that is part of the ADA and all of that stuff, and then you go another level further and like, okay, who's the one that's actually taking the time to respond to this?
Yeah,
I think a lot of the guys and girls that I know that are running their own businesses are like they don't pay attention to that at all, right? And they're like, it's do I have fear of the economy? I don't know. I mean, we're in volatile times, like things could be happening, but I'm going to control what I can control right now. Um, it gets into such a big conversation.
which
Um,
is
I think just the dental landscape right now, like we're in a weird place. I've said this before, probably on your podcast. When I was teaching at a GPR program, and I feel like 6 or 7 years is a good sample size, I was like, oh, the quality of dentists coming out of school is getting worse, both in clinical acumen and know-how and in their ability to just talk to a human being. Um, So if you were putting out into the world these like crazy clinicians, but like they couldn't talk to someone, like whatever, that's why you have a treatment coordinator, but they can't do either, right? And then you do have a pretty high surplus of older dentists that, like, if the economy gets shaky, you're right, they're all going to bail, and there's a lot that are getting ready right now. So the patient population that goes along with those two, you start to get into private practice versus DSO. You know, there's these guys that have been practicing for 37 years. That patient population is used to, you know, one dentist, and he probably still wears a tie, and he, like, you know, like, they're used to that stuff. Those guys are also, a lot of them, out of network, or they're only in network with a couple insurances, and they're doing just fine. And then it's the fight with the small, mid-size, and large DSOs, and they don't give a crap about anything but making a buck. Um, and those are two different patient
Says the guy
populations.
who says the guy who ran the DSO.
Says the guy who's also getting out. You know,
Right.
but it's true, right? And so you kind of look, and I'm not knocking any one. You know, they serve different patient populations, and at the end of the day, I think every patient population is getting served, and that's a good thing. Um, but I mean, kind of back to your question, I'm like, it's like, I'm with you. I'm just always questioning data, right? They're like, spending's up 3%. And I'm like, okay, I mean, like, so are costs. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, it is spending by consumer going up at a higher clip than what I'm having to spend to get the stuff. And that article, just from a glance, covers some of that stuff. What are dentists nervous about? You know, tariffs, this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, we just experienced that. You know, like, we're expanding one of the offices and starting another office, and you talk to these supply and equipment guys, and they're freaked out. You know, I would get it now because I've seen these chairs change price 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Also, where's your data coming from? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, are you saying that so that I buy quick? Because that's certainly a good tactic. Or is it actually happening? Um, but I mean, dentistry's a tough business, man. It's a tough
It
business.
is tough business. What really gets me all the time with ADA, and I don't want to be the one like poking holes at ADA, but like they should be the beacon of the industry, right? Like,
Mhm.
and if they're the beacon of the industry, they know how hard it is. So like bring the positive stuff or bring both. Like, like they're concerned, but hear all the things that they shouldn't like that should make you feel more positive about the future. Like these are the positives.
I
Like
would take it one step further. Here's all the things that are happening. We've heard your concerns, right? This report, we've surveyed you. Here's what we can work on together to lower, you know, your stress, your concerns, right? We're concerned about this thing. Great. ADA, that's the whole country. If you were better at what you did, you might have some more people signing petitions that would actually help, you know,
exactly.
dentists, right? But I don't know. I just I don't know enough about what goes on there, and their concerns. And then, like, how are they? I can't remember a time that the things that concerned me and the dental circles that I run in were addressed by the
ADA.
ADA, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would say you go back, and it's like, sure, uh, you know, the spend is going up. Is that Does that take into consideration anything having to do with insurance? Because I think there's so many people that are relying on insurance, and if insurance can continue to behave the way that they're allowed to behave, um, it puts dentists in a bad place. I've never before had to tell patients I can't do that treatment, and I don't shy away from telling patients really anything. And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Your insurance doesn't even pay me enough to cover my lab fee for that removable thing, right? So I can't do it." And they're like, "Well, what do I do?" I I don't know. Call your insurance. Um, you know, that would be something I think the ADA could potentially take on and lead the charge. And I think that they'd probably have a lot of people behind them.
Mhm.
Um,
What if we
but
do a quick sample? Like you 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 actually from your circle of friends, I feel like you have a really good grasp of what's going on in the country. You have people in California and LA, you have people in Texas, you have people in New York, you have people like, I'm sure you have people in different places more than what I just described. If we just like step outside of this article, do you feel that a lot of private practice is struggling, or do you feel like it might be emotional, like they're struggling, but actually it's the businesses that are doing pretty good? Like they have challenges, but these are workable challenges. Like it's not existential or anything like that. And we just need to find a way, like, like
It's
some
funny
of
you
them are
say
getting
that.
out of the network. Like
Yeah.
what's your feel of your circle of friends?
So it's interesting because I would say, like, I was reading some of the information in there, and it's like, and this might be pure conjecture and I'm just making this up, but I feel like I've had enough conversations with people that are selling their offices, right? So end of career, that cannot come to grips with the fact that they didn't make what they thought they were going to make, that their office is not worth what they thought it was worth. And so if you kind of extrapolate that, I think there's a lot of fear with dentists because, I mean, shit, you're told by these, like, the people in your dental school, you know, uh, take the popular sentiment. Dentists are crazy rich. You tell someone they need 3 crowns and like, what do you need, a new boat? And I'm like, God dang. Like, so it's hard to measure, like, because what they're asking people is like, what is your emotional response to this thing? Right. And like, there's no fact there. It's just like,
Yeah.
it depends where the person is at in their career, in their earnings, all of that sort of stuff. But I would say it's a pretty popular sentiment among dentists that they should be more successful. Is that because they're, trying to measure up to somebody else? Is that because they're trying to measure up to what they were told in dental school, what it was like in the 70s? I don't know. But I do think that a lot of people feel that they should be earning more, particularly the more you get into like the insurance world, right? And you're like, dude, I'm busting my ass, and your insurance is offering me $700 for a crown. You know, do the math on that. The profit's not there. At least not the profit that I think most people are expecting. Um, I would like to think most people are expecting somewhere in the mid to high teens and higher. Um, So then, a lot of people are like, oh, so what do I do? Do more, do more, do more, do more, this hamster wheel, and they're not satisfied with their career. And that's a whole nother conversation, right? It's the frustration just because you're not satisfied with your career. It's a really funny thing how many people I know that I would say are the most successful, some of the best dentists that I know, clinically and business, and everyone's goal is to get the hell out of this industry. Um, why is the top percentage of this industry trying to get out? Um, so I think a lot of people are just struggling with a lot of stuff. Um, but I would say, do most of the people I know, I would say they feel okay about their practices, right? I think it's like once you start to go on that journey of improvement, you just recognize how much room there is. Um, Dentists are a type A, you know, keep going, 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 going type of person, right? And so, like, talk to people who are making obscene amounts of money, and are they happy? You know, they always want a little more. Oh, I could squeeze a little more out of this. I could squeeze a little more out of that. It's tough, man. That sort of data is like, it's just so multifactorial. I don't think that's the other reason that I don't read it. Right? I'm like, you could ask me those questions Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and like depending on how my day went, like I could be at 100% or not even a number, just yelling obscenities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
You know what's interesting? I was just thinking about it. Like you mentioned a dentist who still wears a tie. Uh, but I was just thinking about it, like maybe back in the days, you couldn't measure up to some high profile dentist in LA because you didn't see their day-to-day life. Like there was no Instagram,
Yeah.
right? You would go to a conference, but nobody talked about the numbers. Nobody talked about the revenue, right? So like take, I don't know, 15 years ago, I don't think there was a thing, even 15 years ago, 20, but probably like even 15 as recent as that, like to talk about numbers, to talk about how well you're doing. It was primarily clinical.
Mhm.
And so then you would go to your local dental, what is it, study club, and everybody's from your city, and then everybody would just what people mostly would talk about. Like, and you would see the cars and but I feel like everyone was pretty this like the same.
It's that whole world now.
And now it changed.
Comparison, yeah.
Now it changed. And I always push back or I try to push back is like, okay, the golden days of dentistry, the 70s and the 80s, or even the 90s, when you put assigned dentists, they're gone. Okay. Um, so is in my business. Like you could have just say like I'm a software company and everybody signs up because nothing else was available. Like, like so let's do something about it. Like we all know someone who is doing really well. And
Yeah.
we all know someone who is pretty happy.
I would go even further than that too. Dave Maloli. I'm like,
Yeah.
his ability to factor things into, like, does this fit in my life? Does this make me happy? Type of thing, right? It's a worldwide thing now, like with social and all of that stuff to start to compare. But it's like I've interviewed dentists, and I'm like, what is it that you want? Like, what do you want to do? And I've had more than one whose goal was to be like a popular Instagram dentist. So weird, right? Makes
Yeah,
me feel so old, but I'm like, so weird. And I'm like, but why? Right? Like,
mhm.
why? What is that going to do for you? And if it actually does something for you, great. Like you figured it out and, and get out there, be on social, do a really good job of it. You will be dental famous. I always just kind of chuckle because outside of the world of dentists, no one gives a fuck about your Instagram page. Um, yeah, it's just like the comparison thing you start to see a lot, right? I'm like, look, there's guys that are making $250,000 a year and they could not be happier. They're dialed in on what they want. They're probably not working 5, 6, 7 days a week. Um, they don't give a crap about having the newest Mercedes or anything like that. And I would say that I envy those ones that have figured out like all of their little happy switches. Then you got guys that have an office that's doing 4 million and they're cutting checks out of their personal savings because they haven't figured out how to run their business yet. But in your example, at the meeting or on social or whatever, they're talking about how they have a $4 million office, and everyone is going to assume this person's killing it and living the life. And um, yeah, I don't know, man. There's a funny personality trait in dentists.
I think
Uh,
it's a human.
oh
Like everybody's affected by it. I
yeah.
feel like I don't think it's just dentistry. It's just we think it's just dentistry because we're in it. We see it every day.
Well, I think there's a level of competitiveness in, dentists are like top 3% of educated individuals in the, like, you don't get there without being pretty darn competitive, very type A. Like it does bring a different type of person. I think everyone is that way. I think everyone's learned how to be a little bit more that way probably than they should be, but it's a bizarre thing. It's a bizarre little competitive world. You're right. We're in it. So that's what we see all the time. But
Can we go back to what you said earlier, which I think is interesting? I haven't seen it, but when you say a lot of, maybe not a lot, but like let me not rephrase what you said, like and put my words into what you said. But you mentioned something that there are a few people, or there are people that are trying to get out of the profession. Like, what's causing it, and what's your assessment of that? Like, why do you think is that happening? Is it like I'll leave it at that. Like, what's your assessment?
so I would say the two types of people that I know that are doing that are the ones that are very successful in the business part of this industry and have either one or multiple offices. Um, and I think that they have got to a point where they see that there are other industries that would require far less work and would result in more profit. So I think they've just noticed they're like, okay, I'm at a point now where like I can run a business, whether it's dental or something else. And they're like, dentistry is just a fight day in and day out to get, a lot less than I could get. So I think part of that is a business decision. I think the other group that I've seen, and a lot, like I could say people that I went to school with, um, I think are just disenfranchised by the whole thing. I think they were disillusioned by how difficult the job would be. And I see this a lot with the really young dentists too. You know, you're still told in dental school that it's get out, hang your shingle, you'll pay your loans off in 7 years and you'll be making all this money. And it's that's not it. It doesn't, you know, you can make it happen, but that's not the norm. But I would say I've also seen, and I can just say it through my own eyes and echo what a lot of them are saying is like, even in my career, so since 2009, it has become such a transactional thing, dentistry, that it's like, I mean, people used to like regularly, you know, they'd bring you little gifts and they said thank you. And they were like genuine about their, you know, like you helped me, right? They recognized that there was help there. It's not just, I want you to swipe your card at the end of the appointment. Um, and I think I see a lot of that. And so it's a thankless job. It's hard mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I don't think that dentists a lot are prepared for that. It can grind you down. And I don't want to be a pit of doom and despair. I think you can do freaking awesome things in dentistry. I think if you're mentally prepared for it, you can have fantastic days, weeks, months, years. I still think we do really cool things for people that only a very small percentage of people can do. Um, I've been lucky to be intentional about the clinical stuff that I do and like the practice that I had and that sort of stuff. So I've seen that it can be good and fun and enjoyable, and your patients love you. And um, but I think it's getting trickier. I think a lot of people are just like, dude, screw this, man. Like patients are just jerks. I don't know. If you looked into it, maybe, you know, the universe is always kind of holding up a mirror, right? So like what changed
Yeah.
with you? Like why did people used to say really nice things to you about you, blah, 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 blah. And then now it's not happening as much. I don't know. Um,
What about what about insurance though? Like, do you think if we sample patients from insurance-driven practice and fee-for-service practice, do you think one group would be less thankful?
I would say that in insurance, you know, practices, and I think every dentist listening would know that you have a percentage of people that are like, I'll just do whatever my insurance says I can do, and I won't do anything else. So, my argument would be you didn't connect with your patient well enough, and you know maybe you didn't give them enough financial options to do that. But you're always going to have that group of people. I think the flip side is the fee for service office, and um, it's a different type of crazy, right? You might need to be doing some sort of sedation on a lot of those people because they know that no one in the insurance world is even going to deal with them, and that in a fee for service world, like you're going to sit there and maybe talk to them for 42 minutes about their sick cat, you know, and then you throw some nitrous and a pill in their mouth, and you know you actually get to do the dentistry or something. I don't know. I don't think that one is worse than another. I think it's just different.
Yeah. My guess would be that, insurance is kind of driving this industry to the ground. And so I think it might be that you said that or someone else in our circle that a dental insurance should not be called insurance. It just should be called a discount plan.
Uh huh. It's a benefit. Your workplace is giving you a benefit of $1,500. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's it. Because like medical works completely opposite, and I think that's where we make a big mistake. Um, Calling it a dental insurance. But that's like, we can't solve that. So why even talk about it? Forget it. Right. So like, it is what it is. But I think as a private practice, you have so much more freedom if you, like you said, you have the right mindset. Like you have the right mindset about your patients. You have the right mindset about the growth that you're going to start with insurance and eventually you're going to drop them and you're going to become a fee for service practice. Like that's it.
There's a lot of fear there too, and it's justified. I mean that is scary. You know, look at anyone in any business. Um, I'm going to drop this group of people, which might result in, you know, X, Y, or Z, right? I run a ice cream shop, and 38% of my sales come from this gluten-free ice cream that we have,
From the high
right?
school down the
And
street that only pays $5 for the ice cream that costs $10.
yeah, And so I'm going to get prepared to drop this gluten-free ice cream. What's going to happen? I'm looking at losing 38% of um my money, my business, And so like it's scary. I do think there's a percentage, and I don't know if this is regional. There's a percentage of people who I think are starting to understand how bad insurance is. Um, and I don't necessarily think it's based off of an education level. I'm just trying to think of like, I have this conversation with people regularly, and being in multiple offices in my state here, the northernmost office is a very high education, high tech, high earning population, and some of the other ones are not. Um, but it's the same conversation. There are a lot of people that, like one of the first things I'll say is like, my insurance sucks, right? And I'm always like, don't worry, all insurance sucks.
Right.
but it,
Right.
but it just, I think people are starting to understand it. I think, not to get doom and gloom again, but I'm like, one of the strongest lobbying in terms of money spent is insurance and pharmaceuticals. So like, who's going to bat with them?
Yeah. But I think it's also like to like counter argue that is I think the population is becoming more and more health conscious.
Uh-huh.
Like
Do
look
they
at the
do they
amount of
understand
products.
that dental is health?
Right. So like look at the amount of like consumable consumer products available in the market, like toothpaste, fluoride, non-fluoride, whatever your stand is on it. Like it doesn't matter. Just like look at the number of products. The floss, and they're all sizable businesses, right? So that means somebody's buying. That means there's a good chunk of people out there that is health conscious.
So here's an interesting fact, and I feel like people who listen to podcasts have probably heard this spun 8 different ways, but I don't know the exact data, but I think one of the it's hard to track dental data for people who don't have insurance, right? Because you just don't have access to that many people.
Right.
But of the people who have dental insurance, I think the people who actually use it is in the 40th percentile. So that means
Wow.
if you just extrapolated that like 40% of US adults go to the dentist and 60% do not. So there could be a huge counter argument to like, okay, we're all as dentists complaining about insurance, but 60% of people don't even have dental insurance. So do something about it. Like go find those people and get them into your office. And to that point, like don't give up. I don't think there should be a give up on like, well, this is the way the world is, so we just got to deal with it.
Right.
But there is a day-to-day thought that is okay. So you take insurance, you take a lot of insurance. This is what they're going to pay you. It ain't changing today or tomorrow. So like pull your boots up and get to work. Like do something about it. And I think that's just a human nature thing. It's much easier to complain than it is to like, okay, I'm going to really put some hard work in over the next 10 months and try to fix 2 of my problems,
Another
or get
thought
the
that
fuck out of dentistry. Like, if that's what
no,
makes you so
we have a shortage
miserable,
of dentists. Like, come on, no, please stay. Like,
I
please
don't,
figure out what you want to do.
I actually don't buy that. When people say there's a shortage of dentists, I'm like, yeah, that's because nobody wants to go to this piece of land
That's my
in the,
point.
in the middle of
That's I
nowhere.
got 2 points to say. Like to again, just to like keep going with this conversation is like the more rural, the better practices are
Say
doing.
it. Preach, baby, preach.
The more rural, the better the practice is doing. So like,
How
okay,
many
and it's so
rural
interesting.
dentists are taking insurance? Look it up. Fee for service practices in the middle of nowhere doing 2.3
Yeah,
million a year,
yeah,
taking home 800,000 in profit.
yeah. And their challenge is like you got to have a big parking lot so that people can park their tractors.
Yep. And what happens when they get to retirement? It freaking closes because nobody wants to go out there.
Yeah. And
Bro, I have
yet we have a
found.
bunch of people fighting to open an office in Seattle. Like, come on, really? Or Austin, Texas.
Uh-huh.
Like, just go rural and you'll be
Uh-huh.
fine. And I think the second point that I hear from some of my successful dentists is like, look, if you learn how to do extractions and root canals and you don't refer these patients out, you'll be okay.
That's the flip side. Get better at your job. But to that point, though, too, granted, if you like being really busy all day, but I know some of the higher producing dentists that I know, and not in the cosmetic world, just bread and butter, and they don't do endo, and they don't really do extractions. They're just on skates all day, running 6 rooms, going freaking crazy. And some people like that. I don't. I don't like that. But to your point, man,
The beauty is you can choose.
I was looking. You can choose, right? But that's again, maybe it's too deep of a conversation. But like, what's going to make you happy? Because if being a dentist in Manhattan, New York, is going to make you happy, cool. Don't complain about your rent. Don't complain about fighting for patients. Don't complain about any of that because you chose it. If you want to live in Manhattan and maybe take a train transfer out to Queens, where there's a lot less dentists, you can clean up. You're going to have a 38-minute commute each way, right? But you get to live where you want to live. You're making more money. You're seeing less patients. You're a little less stressed, perhaps. Now look at a different state. Yeah, you got to drive up in the mountains, or maybe you live in a smaller area that's half an hour outside of the major town, but you see half the patients and you make twice as much. What's going to make you happy?
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm glad we're talking about it because I feel like
Here's what's really interesting. Let's go back to the comparison thing. I was talking to a dentist that I know, very, very small town. The next dentist is like 41 minutes away in any direction, right? Hit me up asking about how do I find an associate, right? They had an associate, life was peachy for 6 years, and then they're leaving. Like, what do I do? And they've been looking for an associate for like a year, right? They can't find anyone to move out there. And I'm like, I mean, go worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that's going to happen to you? You have a long wait list. You might have to see some more patients. I get it. I mean, maybe you were loving working 3 days a week and are not enjoying the prospect of 5 days a week. But if you stayed at 3 days a week, you'd have a pretty slammed schedule, and people would find a way to, you know what I mean? I'm like, I think
to
we
find a
go,
way to do what? To see a dentist and find another dentist, or find a way to see you.
yeah, either one. I don't know what the compensation was there. I don't know if they took insurance or anything like that. Um, if they did, cut it, right? Like if you want a 3 day a week job and there's no one within 41 minutes of you, you're still sitting pretty. Um, the patients chose to live out there. They know there's not another dentist. I would feel bad, but I'm like, you still have access. You can get your car and drive if it's that big of a deal. If not, you can pay me. It kind of is what it is, but I don't know. I think it's always a way. It's
Right.
always a way. But in the conversation, they were like, well, this person's doing that and that person's doing that. And like, if I have 8 ops, I should be doing 3.4 million a year. And I'm like, but you're also comparing it to somebody that's in a different state with a different practice model with 2 associates with blah, 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 blah. Like figure your own thing out.
Interesting. Um, to wrap this up, how do we stop, like, or who are the people you mentioned Dave Maloney? Like, who are the people that do you think that are speaking up in a positive way about the industry? Like, if we would identify and say, like, Dave Miller, awesome. Like, and people
Funny.
that,
I don't
yeah,
know if anyone's speaking positively about the industry. I know there are a lot. I know there are a lot. I'll be honest, I've taken like a 2 year sabbatical from listening to dental podcasts. I just don't do it anymore. Um, but I know there's people out there that are talking about positive things. I think what the dental industry and a lot of the people in the dental industry could do is just figure out your gaps and learn how to be better at them. I would say communication is a huge thing. Patient, doctor to patient communication, which will bleed over into every other part of your life, but is a huge gap for a lot of people, right? If you want to drop insurance, you got to have your patients love you enough to pay money. If you're going to go all out of network, they got to love you. If you're going to go from out of network to fee for service, they got to love you And like, how do you do that? It's just the way you communicate with them, right? It's the relationship that you have with them. So find a podcast that's doing that. If you refer everything and run a report and look at the amount of money that you're missing out on, and I'm not saying do every single thing, be smart about how you do these things, but then just go learn how to do that. And there's podcasts that will talk about it, right? And then there's education that will teach you how to do that. I got to jive with you. Dave is, I just think, I mean, I happen to know him and love the dude, but he just happens to be an amazing guy. And it takes a while. It took a while for me to hear his message, which is like, go in reverse. Like, here's what makes you happy. How does dentistry fit into that? That was my takeaway. Everyone's going to have a different takeaway.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but I would argue that if everyone kind of started somewhere there, right? Dentistry's pissing me off. Is it? Or is it like cramping your lifestyle?
Yeah.
Can you make it fit in your lifestyle? Because it can be a tremendous career. And it can give you a whole lot of things. Incredible relationships, really good connections, a really good paycheck, a retirement if you're smart. I mean, it can give you a lot. But we're emotional beings, human beings. And so, you have 2 bad weeks and you're like, fuck it, I hate all of this. The sky's falling. The economy's going to kill me. I don't know. Newsflash. We've had a couple downturns in the economy and dentistry is still here.
Right.
Right. We're not the only ones that,
Magically.
can't take a vacation when the economy collapses. That's the majority of people. We're not above, we're not above or below, any other career. In my opinion, we own businesses. Whether you actually own the business or you're an associate, it's still your business, right? Like you got to mind your business. The world's not going to end. And if the world ends, none of us are here to podcast anyway. So who cares?
Right. And so, Brian, last thing I want to ask you. Again, while it's fresh, you're on the way out from a DSO. Again, I don't want to go into the details about your experience and things like that. What I do want to ask is when someone is looking to build their own DSO like today, they have one office, it's a successful office, they're thinking about it. What are your non-negotiables about building a DSO?
Mm. Wow. There's a good 1 hour podcast right there. I just say it's not settling. So not settling for any person on the team, not settling with any, specific insurance just because maybe they have a lot of people in the neighborhood, not settling for the cheapest of X, Y, or Z. I think it's just sticking. It's just, you got to be able to stick true to what you want. So if you have your private practice and the reason that you're successful is because you treat your team really well and maybe you have a line of products that work really well in your hand, but they're kind of expensive. And you only take these 4 insurances because you're not willing to take, um, things that you feel underpaid, undervalued. If you're going to expand, you got to keep those values and, those beliefs for the next place and the next place and the next place. Because at some point, you're also not seeing patients, right? Maybe office 3, maybe office 2, you're not seeing patients. And now all of a sudden you're looking at your P&L and you're like, well, I could shave off 1% there and I could shave off 1% there. You could. But if it gets to the non-negotiable things that you have, you can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting. Not settling.
Yeah.
Pretty much just how
Right.
it is in life. If
Yeah.
you want to have a good life, just figure out the things you don't want to settle on and stick to it.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How long did it take you to
You're
figure this out?
shit. 3 years. Years. It took years. Right. It's funny though, because let's look at what you said. You have it in your personal life, you know, and everyone gets to pick what it is. I don't buy cereal in bags. I know this is really weird. there's something that weirds me out about like the cheap cereals on the bottom shelf, even though I know they're the same thing. I don't, because it's $1 more for me to get this cereal that I like. I'm not going to get toilet paper that feels like sandpaper. Like there's a few things that I'm like, you know, I have, this is not a non-negotiable. Like, or it's not a negotiable thing. Like I choose to spend a few extra dollars on these things. I do kind of feel like that mentality's got to bleed over into your business life. Like, what are you willing to negotiate? What are you not? And then recognizing that the things that you will not negotiate on might cost you some more money. So if you want to be hyper focused on this line item should be this percentage, how do you get there? And that's the fun of business. If you can get to a point where you have some time to think about it like that, but you're like, yeah, I got to figure out a way to add a percent, because on this line item, I'm always going to be 1% over. I think most people would be like, cut another crown. But if your non-negotiable is doing another day of dentistry to get that crown because your schedule is already full, find another way.
Right. That is really cool. And for just to tie it together to what you said before, once you figure out your non-negotiables in the practice, it would be great if you can communicate it to the team so that they know. Like if you decided that the morning huddle starts at 7, not a minute later, and that's your non-negotiable, like it's great if everybody knows, they know the consequences, and then it's up to them. And I think a lot of times, I go to sponsor one of the dental speakers now, and I really actually enjoy listening. You probably know Scott Luna. So, and I sit there in the room and I listen to a lot of what he has to say, and he does say a lot of controversial stuff. But if you boil it down, he's like, the business is the business. And whatever he teaches, a lot of times people in the room are like, how am I going to do that? Like checklists. He's like, on a checklist daily, you're as a doctor, you go through and there are things and you have to restock the coffee. So one day you go in and Susan at the front desk, you're like, hey, Susan, here's your checklist, coffee, restock. No, what happened? She's like, I'll do it. Go back the next day, look at the coffee and not restock. Susan, what happened? She's like, I'll do it right now. All right, cool. In the evening, come back, restock, not restock. Susan, what happened? She's like, well, I told you to restock it. You didn't restock it. Pack your shit and go. And everybody's like, and he's like, I don't care. I don't care if it's your favorite like front desk person. I don't care if it's this. Like there are certain things. If you decided that these are your non-negotiables, you're going to stick to this. You're going to have a checklist. You're going to build a culture of compliance to the checklist. I mean, you're building but everybody's like, well, but what if you don't? What if you have to let your favorite hygienist go? Like
there's such a
teeth.
fear. There's such a fear with letting people go these days, and it is hard to find people. And it is hard to find people, I think to the caliber that you would want. It's funny that I was one of my assistants, the newest assistant with I think the group, and I was asking her the other day, like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what's going on here? You're 20 or something like that, and she wants to do hygiene. But then she's like, but now that you know that I want to do hygiene, you're not going to fire me. And I was like, guess what? I've never fired anyone. She's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, people fire themselves. You need to understand that, at least at this office. You've been given the list of things that you need to do. And if you choose not to do it, you're firing yourself. I'm not firing you. It's just said a different way, but it's like, these are non-negotiables. You took the job. You knew that these were the non-negotiables. You signed a piece of paper that said you knew they were the non-negotiables, and then you chose not to do it.
Yeah.
So you have fired yourself. It's not me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty incredible. All right. Let's wrap this up. Any closing thoughts?
I'm hungry.
You hungry? Like for life? You hungry for like
I
new
am
chapter in your life to move to North Carolina?
100% excited for that. But no, I want like grilled cheese and tomato soup right now.
All right. I won't stop you from it.
No, I think, I don't think everything can be doom and gloom all the time. And I feel like if we're surround ourselves by 13 dentists and all of those dentists are doom and gloom all the time, you got to find another circle, because it can also be good. I know a lot of what we covered was doom and gloom, but it's like, figure out what you want and out of dentistry and just make it happen.
Yeah. And it's definitely that 13 people can be from 88. Like looking at this report, there's a bunch of gloom and doom people. So like, no way.
Nope.
No way. Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, buddy.
We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
See ya.